established back in 2019 and has become one of the biggest esports gaming and lifestyle organizations globally. Galaxy Racer seems to be the center hub for all gamers.
DXR! 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 DXR!
The organization now carries over 100 content creators with a total reach of over 370 million followers across all platforms and more than, are you ready, 2 billion views.
हेलो दोस्तों, जिस दिन का इंतजार था वो आ गया। गैलेक्सी रेसर पाकिस्तान का इवेंट 8 और 9 जनवरी को 2022 पाकिस्तान चाइना फ्रेंडशिप सेंटर इस्लामाबाद में। आइए, खेलिए, जीतिए 2 करोड़ रुपए कैश। पाकिस्तान की तारीख का सबसे बड़ा ई स्पोर्ट्स टूर्नामेंट। Don't forget to be there. See you then. That's where the Galaxy is going to be shining.
Hey! पायलट एग्जाम मिस नहीं कर सकता। उस ट्रेन पर चढ़ना है।
पायलट इसे बनना है, गाड़ी हम छोड़वाएगा।
Hey! पेट्रोल तो पूरा है,
लेकिन ड्यू के बिना एडवेंचर अधूरा है।
लेफ्ट, राइट। मेरी दादी इससे बेहतर गाड़ी चलाती है।
तो खुद चला ले।
Shortcut! Aw. Cute. देख, अब ये ट्रेन छूटनी नहीं चाहिए।
तुझे तो ट्रेन पे चढ़ा के ही रहेंगे।
No, 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 no.
क्या? Thank you.
नहीं, Mountain Dew.
Come on!
माउंटेन ड्यू, यार हैं तो पार हैं।
Welcome back, everybody. You're watching none other than Gamers Galaxy, presented by Mountain Dew and brought to you by none other than Galaxy Racer. It's Waldeity and Tultrus back on the mic once again after what was an insane game. But I say once again, even because I've returned from the the quarterfinals all the way back. It was actually Inflict stepping into my shoes to cover the first game. Thank you for that, by the way. But now I'm back, feeling pretty good now, and I've evacuated the hospital bed so that Fear Legends can fairly lie in it after that last game. So Tultrus, tell me a little bit about the last match, because to be honest, I missed it.
I mean, that was quite the nail-biter. We didn't know what we would expect coming into the semifinals. I mean, sure, we have known Team Expert for quite a while. We know what to expect. I think their throne has also accumulated quite a bit of rust as they've been sitting on it for so long. But I really thought that Fear Legends would put up a dominant performance, would at least be able to take it to a Game 3. But we didn't quite get to see that. But instead, though, we did see Team Fear Legends come very far ahead in terms of, in terms of how they mounted against the pressure that faced against them. I don't think we've seen a matchup where a team has come this close against Team Exploit. They secured 10 or 11 of those rounds in that
on
second
LAN as
map.
well.
On LAN, exactly, especially considering that Trick, one of their players, it was his first time on LAN. So that was quite surprising. The result, not so much, but the way that the result came about.
Yeah, I think they actually put up a really good performance on map number 2, but Fracture being that close, that was absolutely crazy. I did get a chance to see that action, but now it's time for us to dig into the final Valorant game of the day. It is none other than Clarity versus Arrow. And Talha, I know you've got so much to talk about this game, because Clarity, you know, they tore through those quarterfinals and they ended up beating Salt. That's a team that was destined to be in the finals, perhaps even in the grand finals. But no, Clarity with so many roster shuffles and whatnot, they finally found the pieces to make it to that final stage. But will they make it to the final day? That's the big question, Talha.
And I mean, they've been vying for it for quite a long time, you know. Clarity Esports, they're, you know, in this stage, they're the newest esports organization. They came about in the Sky Esports Championship through the third iteration, but they didn't manage to find any success with a 4-loss streak going their way. But they finally caught a break in the quarterfinals of this tournament, where they were able to take a game, or actually they were able to take third game and the series away from Salt Esports and actually eliminating them. And you know, when we talk about the big three, Team Exploit, Team Salt, Team Arrow, that's, you have to go by it step by step, you know. And for Clarity, they're heading in the right direction. They've taken out Salt Esports and now they have Team Arrow in their crosshairs.
Yeah, if they can get past Team Arrow, then it's I would go ahead and say they've actually got a very fair chance at beating out Exploit, especially because I know that Exploit ended up beating out Fear Legends, but it wasn't really in the convincing fashion we anticipated them to. What are your thoughts on that, Talha?
I mean, you know, give or take, Exploit did have to adjust to new experiences as well. One of their players, King, he's very young and it was his first LAN, and despite of that fact, though, he managed to put up, you know, the MVP in that game number 2. He was top fragging by a very fine margin, you know, just well ahead of his entire team. But Clarity Esports, you know, for this matchup, it does seem like they have what it takes in terms of team composition. I mean, I know you know Dazzler very well, and he has departed, but they have some neat little additions that should go in their favor in the form of Beast and Butsahab. I mean, Beast, who was a core founding member of Salt Esports, it certainly seemed, you know, he provided some valuable insight to Clarity Esports that helped them take the game from Salt, helped them eliminate Salt Esports in the quarterfinals. And now Clarity have also Butsahab, who was also a forming core member of Team Arrow.
Absolutely.
So is history going to repeat itself in the form of, you know, will Butsahab be able to provide Clarity with enough information on how Team Arrow works for Clarity to eliminate them?
Yeah, and that's one of the big storylines here, right? I know that Clarity weren't really a super well-known team when they started, but now they're a bit of a super team. They've got pieces from Arrow, they've got pieces from Salt, and I'm really interested in seeing how that is going to play out on the server, especially with the dynamic that these players are going to have up against the likes of MSK, up against the likes of Shani. So, in particular, one thing I wanted to point out is that Beast is going to have the pressure of being up against a player like MSK. So how do you think that's going to play into the whole thing, Talha?
I mean, you know, MSK, he's one of the most revered captains, one of the most revered people in this scene, not just in Valorant, but throughout his Counter-Strike career as well. Yeah. He's very well respected, and for good reason, because MSK is, you know, sort of those leaders that you need, especially on the LAN stage, that can keep their cool, keep their composition, help guide their team through to the victory. And as far as, you know, game knowledge is concerned, I have personally been a witness to MSK's analytical ability, and that really does shine. And it shines in the game as well, where Team Arrow are able to pull off these unique combinations, those unique niche plays that does seem to get the better of their opponents, does seem to win them some of those rounds.
Absolutely, but we are going to be heading straight into the veto, Talha. So what are your thoughts on this? Because we're going to be seeing Icebox being picked up as the first map. It's not something that Clarity have really been struggling on too much, but neither is Arrow. So do you have anything to say about that?
I mean, it's a bit surprising to see Arrow let go of Icebox. I mean, sure, you do ban Split out. It's a map that Clarity does very well on, and we've seen it in their run against Salt Esports in the previous tournament in Infinity Cup. They didn't manage to win, but they did very well. Against Salt, it was a 2-1, but up on Icebox, you know, it's very chaotic. From all of the matches that we've casted so far, you have both those Vipers, you have the potential of a Sage or a Killjoy, you have at least one of those two agents up on that map. It's chaos, it's very hectic, you're forced in to go for those retake positions, and often at times it does come out to who uses the better ability and who has the better execute.
Yeah, and this game is also a contrast to the previous one where we saw Breeze, we saw Fracture, we saw both of those newer maps, but now we're not seeing that this time around. Instead, we're going for the much more traditional picks. It's just the maps we've grown very familiar with, Talha. But you know what? There are quite a few more things to talk about here. For example, what I really want to shed light on is how is Godchild going to play, Talha?
I mean, that's a very big question, right? Godchild, he's an absolutely phenomenal player, but we have seen him struggle in the past. But the good thing is that he did very well in the quarterfinals, having that top fragging position or that second top fragging position for his team. It's really a matter of whether his team is able to enable him, and it's very much a question of whether he's going to let the pressure get to him or not. But this is where, you know, as I was talking about MSK's captaincy comes in, I do think that is going to play a crucial role in keeping Godchild stable throughout the competition, throughout this match, where MSK will be able to guide him through.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people are worried about, right? If you're a fan of Arrow, you're worried. Okay, Godchild was actually one of the contenders to be one of the top players in Pakistan. In fact, I remember when Pokemon was really into Valorant, he was destroying everybody. Godchild was the one player that could stand up to him. But just because of the fact that Godchild couldn't put it up consistently and his tendency to choke in these high pressure situations, that's what made him, personally in my book, that's what made him A tier instead of S tier, like someone like Pokemon. Yeah. And that is the difference I want to see here today. So how is he going to perform? That is something we're going to be finding out very soon. But Talha, I know there's quite a bit more that you want to talk about when it comes to clarity, especially when you consider that that their team is essentially a super team. So do you have any more components that we can think about here?
If you look at their composition, you know, you have Beast who is coming in from Salt Esports, you have Batsa who's coming in from Arrow, you have Khatak and Frebik who were core founding members of Clarity. So you have like a super team, and we also have the debut of Onhead. I had the pleasure of working with him where he was observing, and this was really interesting because when I was talking to Onhead, he mentioned what his rank was in the game, you know, and I saw some of his games and I was like, Onhead, you play a fantastic game, why don't you compete, you know? And he was like, well, I mean, I'm looking for a team, and I'm really glad that Clarity Esports picked him up, because we saw him perform in quarterfinals, and what a performance he had. I mean, he played absolutely phenomenal, and Clarity Esports is an organization, or rather a team, where they have shuffle all of their roles around in a way that complements each other. And I think that's where their strength lies.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that Clarity, now they have players like Batsab on the roster, especially because if you look at Arrow, they have such a star-studded lineup. Yeah. And so most of these players, it seems like they're meant to be one of five when it comes to playing in a team. But no, you've got protagonists in the same team as Godchild. What's going on here?
And I mean, you know, you talk about those 1v5 situations and you talk about star power, the star power that Arrow has, and it really does shine. I mean, time and time again, these players, protagonists, has aced out on the verge of elimination. We saw it in the Infinity Cup. Time and time again, Godchild has aced out as well for his team. So these players, you know, you talk about star power. If you mention star power to any eSport Valorant fan out there, they're probably going to mention Team Exploit. Probably Shooter is the first name that's going to be on their tongues. But Team Arrow, they have a lot of it going in their favor as well.
Yeah, I think so. Exploit, sure, they've got all that firepower, but now I think Arrow actually gets a chance to prove some of their own as well. Yeah. And you know what? I think Arrow is one of the few teams that has a very legitimate chance against Exploit. Fear Legends was the one that I had a whole storyline about, to be honest. I personally thought that Fear Legends, just having so much experience on LAN and having the veterans guiding the younger players onto LAN, that would have allowed them to get a victory. But apparently Exploit are bulletproof even to the veterans. But whether or not they can have some of that armor against Arrows, I'm not too sure about that just yet.
I mean, really going to have to see. But I think we can use this next match as a very good benchmark to assess how Team Exploit is going to do. I mean, whoever wins out against them. I mean, if you saw my interview with the HSB, he seems very confident at whoever comes up against him. So we're really going to have to see how he does. But one of the things that concerns me about Team Clarity facing up against Team Arrow is that Team Arrow have a lot of information going their way, because it is very much like a double-edged sword in the sense that Batsahab, he has transferred from Arrow to Clarity Esports, but Batsahab is a duelist. He's always played a duelist. He has 86% of his games on Jet, right? And a duelist is a very core role in the team. A duelist, you know that your team is going to be trying their very best to enable the duelist to function, to get those frags out. And Arrow know exactly how Batsahab function, because MSK has practically reared him into the player that he is today. So that's going to be something very interesting to see, because if Batsahab is playing in his natural zone, something tells me that Arrow is going to know what he's trying to do.
Yeah, it's almost as if Batsahab is sort of fighting back against his mentor almost.
Yeah.
And that's something that really excites me, Talha. And I bet there's so many feelings coming into this game, knowing that you're playing against your former teammates, you're playing against the players that have actually maybe even taught you some critical components about the game. And I think that is something incredibly interesting. But, Talha, I do want to talk about the difference in firepower and how Clarity. I don't particularly think they're on the same level as Arrow, but one thing is for sure. Clarity, this is like the story of Clarity is probably the most linearly progressing thing I've ever seen in my life when it comes to teams. You talked about it a little bit. So you start off with the smaller teams. You take a chip off of Sol, then you take a chip off of Arrow, and then maybe you even get to strike against the big dogs that are Exploit. Is that going to happen though, or are they going to fall off the staircase? That's something we're going to find out very soon.
I mean, they've come very far, though, eliminating Sol to esports, and now they're in the semifinals. Certainly, they made it further than they have ever before. But against Team Arrow, it's a whole different ball game, because Team Arrow, they're looking particularly dominant themselves. MSK in the quarterfinals, he played absolutely phenomenal, able to frag out. And we had quite a bit of banter at the time as well at MSK's performance. It was surprising to see, but it was more of a pleasant surprise. So I'm hoping that Arrow can keep that up as well. And if they do, then Clarity Esports, they're going to be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be too long before we finally start to head into the game, Talha. I bet the nerves are high on the stage for these players, because they are potentially going to be sent packing home. We start to head on to Icebox. First map, second semifinal. This is all where it comes down.
Clarity Esports, though, they're on the attacking side, and they have managed to picked themselves up two duelists in the form of the Jet and the Reyna. So they need to secure most of these rounds, or at least as many rounds as possible, as this is an attack-sided map. Now, the fact that they have both the Reyna and the Jet means that their defensive side won't be as strong. Neither team has a Killjoy, though, so that is a disadvantage going in their favor. But it is going to be a heavy execute onto the A side, but Godchild, he responds in kind with getting that opening frag. Katak will be able to find a trade, and both teams will reset as that Sage Wall is planted neatly. The Kitchen, though, there's a player going for that frag. It's on ahead. It's his debut. He had played 2 games before against Team Exploit and Team Arrow a year ago. Did not find much success, but I'm hoping he can find it here on the big stage for 50 lakhs. But Shani is going to be finding that trade. His lurk not really working out for him. It's a 3v4 situation, but Arrow, 2 of their players are very low. The Sage is up, though. So one player should be getting healed over here. The Viper Wall going to get planted. And with this, Clarity are moving in on towards that B side. The Viper Toxin going to slow down the plant just for a little while longer.
3 versus 3 now.
Comes out.
And Clarity, they've got a very legitimate chance at closing out right away. The Viper manages to take out Sova, and that brings it down to a 3 versus 2. Things are looking a bit dicey here for Arrow as they try to find a way, some kind of avenue where they can poke their head in and potentially get a shot in. But that's the first kill. That could be the opener. How quickly do they fight back? The bomb is ticking down. And there's another kill. 1 versus 2 tucked behind the yellow container, but he cannot do any more. First round going the way of Arrow in a 2 versus 3 clutch.
That was very surprising to see. I mean, despite the fact that it was a 3v2, 2 of their players were very low. The plant did manage to find its way on to the B side. And Clarity had everything going for them in that way, despite the fact that they were 1 man down. But it was still just the first round, both teams dealing a significant amount of damage to each other. And now, both teams actually going for that buy.
Yeah, pretty expected. Normally, we've seen a lot of this trend where you immediately buy up weapons because you have a pretty fair chance at having equal weaponry, so no surprises there, but Arrow, I want to see whether or not they can continue their winning ways, but no, it is already a 2-piece, 1 a pop from each of these members, and the attack side starts to go insane. Arrow find themselves locked out with no key.
And this retake attempt is so incredibly difficult. With them only finding a 1 kill, they have to make their way onto the site and they have to do it very quickly. It's Shani who's going to enter the site with the Sage on top of it. But it's very difficult that the Sage wall is there. They're going to have to try and take it out, giving away their information on ahead though. He's neatly planted himself on the other side. He's going to make contact with them and he is going to be able to find that kill. With the first round in favor of Clarity, it's now 1-1.
By the way, that was a particularly one-sided round for Clarity, if anything. How do they just manage to run onto the ace site and run amok? I have no idea. They've done it with SMGs as well, but you know what? It's just the first couple of rounds. Arrow, maybe they're having some teething issues when it comes to playing on the big stage, and that was part of the storyline we were talking about, Talha. Just knowing that MSK is also going to have a lot of the responsibility of keeping these younger players under check as they're probably going through a very difficult experience, just having the crowd, having a lot of the nerves of Flan after a very long time especially.
And he has picked himself up the stage, so definitely priming himself for that leadership position on the supportive role.
I want to see Clarity's movement here. Oh, Frebic, he could have had some information off of that push, but there were actually quite a few members trying to aggress forward. That's the first double. This is Clarity. Oh my goodness. No chance to fight back here. Just going to be Arrow taking 1 to the chin. Pistols though, so it's still forgivable.
But Arrow needs to do a bit more damage. They need to take out 1 more player, but already with a 1v4 scenario, it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to find it. Short of a lucky flick that he might be able to get. He's trying to land some shots though, but with his position being revealed, it doesn't seem like he has anywhere to go. Oh, actually, he's going to find the kill anyway, but he will get traded out. Not too bad on Team Arrow's side. They managed to take 2 players down, but the problem is the way they're losing the site.
Yeah. Man, there was so much hype around Clarity when they finally beat Salt, when they finally made their way into the semifinals, and they're continuing to show us that that was not a fluke. They can continue to deliver, but they've got to show us a lot more, Talha.
It is going to be a gun round though for Team Arrow, and with them facing against 4 Spectres, this should be one that they're looking to secure. With Batsab, the only one with a Vandal to his name. Oh, though, he's going to go in. Clarity there again managing to find all of these kills with just a Spectre on that long position. And now Beast, he's running forward towards onto that site. All sorts of utility being thrown in there. The Viper orbs, the Viper slow. So difficult, but now the spike plant does come out, and MSK, he's instantly going to fall. As the Sova, the Sage revive is up though, but even if you expend it, that's a 3v5 at best, and those are not good odds. As Team Arrow, they're forced to back away from the
Nothing
site.
he can do about it, so he's just gonna back off. Gotta make sure that they keep their guns. Even a couple guns could actually still do quite a bit in the next round, but my biggest question is, where is this version of Clarity coming from? Are we seeing a weakened Arrow just because it's land, just because the nerves are high? Or are we seeing a super empowered Clarity that had so much research going into this match? And obviously all the little factors you talked about, Butsob having a lot of info, just being a super team, Clarity maybe finally putting all the pieces together, and also having that sweet land buff of just having all that energy combined.
I mean, whatever it is, it certainly seemed to be working for them, Clarity Esports. I mean, we know that this is one of their strongest maps, the Icebox, but them doing this well, them taking these rounds in this convincing fashion is certainly something that I did not expect from them. But it's a pleasant surprise, and not so pleasant if you're Team Arrow, though, as they need to make something happen, as they're losing out on these rounds. They're not letting their economy build up. Having to buy those Spectres, having to buy those guns is still losing out. And now 1-3 on the score line. As Team Arrow, they don't have the buy to go forward for this one either. As Beast is making his way forward, but he's facing a lot of resistance. The Viper wall is planted. The Toxins are going to slow them down as they are forced to back away from the site. But they're advanced, though. They're going to make their way forward again once that Viper wall goes down. They're using a lot of firepower for nothing. But
yeah, and they're just going to be backing off, Talha. They don't even get anything off of it, but there's still a minute on the clock, and that has sold the idea that A is still something that can potentially be up for grabs. So that's something that Arrow have got to watch out for, but they're still going to have a fair concentration of players close to the A site, so they can very quickly retaliate if that Clarity push eventually comes through. And based on the position of the spike, that's what we're likely to see. The Viper wall is the only thing that will eventually be obscuring vision when the push finally starts to happen, but with only 40 seconds on the clock, we're about to see some action, Talha. How quickly do they reel their resources back in? Clarity, they've got the burden of making a move now, and every breath they take, every little second, means that they've got to spend additional time, additional desperation on just clearing out the bomb site. And this last-minute fake towards the B site means that Clarity, two of their members, can actually intercept the A site, and the bomb will go down very comfortably all the way on A. And Arrow, they'll find themselves bamboozled.
yeah, and the rotation, I mean, they're going to try and go for it, but this retake is so incredibly difficult with Clarity having positioned themselves neatly to intercept any rotation. And we're going to see this, but Butsob going in for that first kill will be able to dash out to safety, but will get taken out by the Sage. As the rest of Clarity have positioned themselves on towards the site.
Oh, but look at B's position, though. Just being available for the flank completely nullifies anything that Arrow could have possibly done. And if you're in the crowd, you can hear the cheers. There's a good reason why Clarity are so hype right now. Just going absolutely nutty, making Arrow look like scrubs.
And this round, I mean, this is where the max potential for both teams comes out. 4 ultimates up for Clarity, 3 ultimates up for Arrow. Both teams having those guns. The Viper's Pit available for both teams. The Sage's Revive up for both teams. Reyna's ultimate up for both teams. So it's really going to come down to how they execute. But for Team Arrow, it's a bit of a dire situation because they absolutely cannot let that Viper Pit go to waste. They cannot let that Sage Revive be for nothing. They need to make something out of it.
Yeah, these ultimates might just be the one thing that end up saving Arrow. Viper's Pit is probably the one thing to keep an eye on here, because the other 2 ultimates, well, the Revive, it can be useful, it can help you out in a duel, but it's such a situational thing. And Reyna's as well, maybe it can bolster your duelist, but it's not really a game changer in a similar fashion as to what you expect from Viper. But if you look at the other side of Clarity, they also have very similar ultimates available. In fact, it's just the same setup, with Jet being layered on top of it as well. So that makes things even more favorable for Clarity. They've continued to not only have a round lead, but also just have everything else. You know, you've got ultimates, you've got money, you've got the mental lead, basically.
And if you're Clarity, if you're, you know, you've just taken down Salt Esports, now you're eyeing down Team Arrow. If you take it, I mean, they should be very confident if they win this series. Still too premature to call that out, though. Still, the scoreline only 4-1. Very much possible for Team Arrow to come back from this. Even if they don't win this first map, they have another one to go that will be their home ground in the form of Haven. But we will see a technical timeout come out as Team Arrow, they really do need to figure something out. As Arrow, I mean, he really does need to talk some sense into some of his players, really does need to build their confidence up as they are looking towards him for that guidance, for that support. And I'm sure that MSK will be able to provide for it. I'm sure that Team Arrow will be able to come back into this map. But they have to make use again of that Viper's Pit. Have to make use of that Reyna. Perhaps go for that Lurk.
Yeah, but it is going to be a while, and we might have to have a bit more of an extended technical timeout here. But in the meantime, Talha, if you've been paying attention to Arrow, I mean, what's the difference you'd like to see personally in their gameplay up against Clarity? Because so far, it doesn't seem like Clarity have done anything too special. They had 2 very basic pushes, and then they had a fake. Yes, a really big brain fake where they went down to the last wire, but what's the difference we're looking for here from Arrow?
I mean, I think if you're Team Arrow, you need to position your duelists in a fashion that they're able to stop the aggression from coming out from Team Clarity, able to get that opening pick off, you know, perhaps position protagonists with that operator, or perhaps position Godchild in a way to stop that flank, or actually stop that execute from coming out. Because it seems like Clarity, they really do snowball in some of these rounds where they quickly go from getting 1 kill to taking complete control over the site. And that just makes the retake for Team Arrow very difficult to accomplish. As a timeout still running, and as Team Arrow tries to figure things out.
Shouldn't be too long before we get done with it, but Talha, is there any standout player that you're particularly looking at? Because for me, I'm going to steal your pick, actually. I know that you were eyeing Onhead since he finally got a team. But no, that's actually the player I'm watching out for. You've got to pick your own now. It's not like I stole that. But yes, Talha, who else are you looking at? Yes, Onhead finally being in a team, finally being able to flex himself. Who else?
I mean, it has to be the moment where Godchild shines, or Protagonist, one of these two. These two have the individual capacity to carry their team. They've demonstrated it time and time again in previous tournaments, able to ace out, able to clutch it out, and they need to do this again. For their team, for this moment, they can't go home like this. And if you're Team Arrow, you really do need to enable your duelist. Because Batsahab, he seems to be doing very well. And you have so much info on Batsahab. MSK has practically reared him into the player that he is today. And they need to be able to figure out how he's getting the better of them.
It's got to be unnerving for MSK as well, right? Because if you're the IGL, you know that these are players that you've played with, and Clarity used to be a team that Arrow would absolutely have no problems with. But now, with the addition of Batsahab, with the addition of a couple players, with Frebic and Kotek still very much being the core, things are different now. It's no longer that Clarity. They finally have stuck true to their names. Their eyes have been opened.
And now Protagonist, he has picked himself up an operator, and he has to make it work this round. It's a very expensive purchase for him. Oh!
Yeah, that's the first kill. That's the opener. 2-piece for them. And now Arrow continue to deliver. How have they managed to turn everything around? Clarity, they only get a bit of chip damage, and hold that thought, Talha. It's actually 2 players being taken out by the Sobo, which means this is still very much a very reasonable prospect that can be salvaged. Clarity now on the way to the B site, right behind Yellow Container. They're going to be using the wall as a curtain to hide themselves, and there's a lot of responsibility on Kotek. He's got to do some more. It's been brought back to a 2 versus 2. And with the revealing arrow, he gets some more information to play off of Frebic. He's going to have to land the first shot. Spots the pixel, knows there's an elbow, and it's all turned around, but Arrow, they can still salvage it. Clarity, though, how have they botched this? Even with the flank, Kotek cannot manage to line up the shots, and that means that Arrow somehow salvage it after nearly dropping a clean round.
And I mean, Khatak, he played it so well. I mean, this is what I was talking about. Protagonists and Godchild, they need to position themselves in a way to get that entry, to get those entry frags out. And they did a wonderful job of that. That operator coming in handy, getting that opening kill. But Khatak was able to find those 2 return kills. But still, he whiffed the last kill where he got the flank, he got the jump. But the last player on Arrow was too quick for him, was too quick on the trigger. As Arrow managing to secure the second round win.
Yeah, once again, Clarity want to direct most of their efforts towards the Beast site. It's already the first frag for them, and Onhead, now he's settling into this new team. MSK responds. The veteran is trying to keep things back. But Clarity, they slow down. Their pace will allow Arrow to quickly compose themselves, and now within the Viper's pit, it's going to become a complete chaos. Sova taking out himself and Kaid, 1 versus 2.
Oh, the Viper
On the
managed to
Reyna,
make
yeah.
it inside, back inside the Viper's pit. It's just down to Protagonist to make something happen as the Viper's pit will go down. We'll go for that diffuser. Is he faking it? Oh, Frebic.
Okay, from Clarity's perspective, they slowed down Arrow once again. It could have been a lot worse.
It was costly though, as they had to expend 3 ultimates to get that done. The Viper's pit as well. But going in their favor was the fact that Arrow had to expend some of their ultimates for it too. Their Viper pit is down now. And with that, both Viper's pit being taken out, it was a sort of an equalizer in that round, with Clarity coming out slightly ahead.
And we get a chance to look at how Clarity will be playing this. A seems to be the name of the game. Beast is the first man in charge of Arena. Utility starts flying. A Sova drone follows through. 4K footage of the site as they start to aggress. Arrow.
No charges left.
They quickly find themselves not quite locked out, but now that the rotations have already come in, Beast teams up with Buttsop to get a 2-piece, and well, I think this is already where Arrow start to make the call. Do they go back? Ooh, Buttsop, nice shot there.
1 enemy remaining.
Single tap that too. As the rest of Team Arrow will fall, that was a very clean entry onto the A site, and this is where we're seeing a sort of weakness come out from Team Arrow. They're not really able to hold the site from getting taken by Clarity, and they lose too much to go for that retake. But now again, Protagonist has picked himself that operator. Again, a very expensive purchase, and we saw it last series as well, where Trick purchased an operator where he didn't find that much with it, and it did cost them that match. And this can't be the way that Team Arrow goes down as well.
Once again, Clarity. They want to dominate Arrow. Victory is not an option. It's gotta be domination. So Vidar doesn't quite reveal much behind the curtain that Viper is set up. It's just calm before the storm. Shani trying to delay it further. And Clarity quickly realized that they can't put all of their chips onto the A side just yet. Perhaps they go for a bit of a fake, maybe rotate over to B, but so far they've actually chosen to linger. They've pre-packaged and sold the idea that maybe the attention is going all the way around. But no, it's not circling back. Maybe leaving some of their efforts here. And Shani should be the first point of contact. A wall is also being prepped up by his teammate, MSK. Stop them in their tracks as they start to go for the bomb plant, but this is where they have to telegraph what they're doing, because to get the bomb down, they need to get rid of the wall. The revealer makes sure that a player can be taken out here, and kills go left and right. Arrow come out with a disadvantage. It's Clarity in a 3 versus 2. Make that 1, as Arrow only have 1 member remaining. Buttsop on, sorry, that final member on the Jet.
Oh, yeah, it's okay, that confusion. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's so synonymous with Jet and also kind of synonymous with Arrow, where my brain was just like, oh yeah, okay, that's Buttsop, that's Jet. No, it's actually Protagonist. And there's a good reason why he's sticking back, because he's got that big ol' OP.
Yeah, but, you know, even though that he's going to save this operator, his team won't have the economy to go for any buys themselves, so it's going to be a very difficult next round as well, even if he manages to save this. And with a 7-2 scoreline, Clarity Esports are looking more dominant than ever. The protagonist, he does know someone is there. Oh, manages to find that flick onto Frebic.
You can see there's also a massive disparity in the kill distribution. So both top fraggers are actually doing quite a bit more than they should be. But so far, Arrow, they have not looked promising. Clarity, on the other hand...
Clarity looks super promising, don't
Yeah, the thing is, I thought Clarity would have teething issues when it comes to land. They would struggle. They would not. They would have the nerves on their mind. But no, it's not. It's nothing like that at all. In fact, they've somehow got a land buff off of this, and which is really surprising since most of these players aren't really proven on a big stage like this one. On to B side we go. Rotations soon to be called by Arrow, and they will be ready. And it's got to come down to the firepower. First kill collected. Buttsob opens space up for Clarity, which means that Arrow suddenly have to fight off a deficit. There's a knife. We didn't even catch that though. And that's how sneaky he is. And quickly Arrow looking super desperate, trying to find something, but it's quickly very feasible. Despite slowly taking down,
some of those weapons.
It's gotta be the round for Clarity, but Arrow still have a very reasonable shot. Moving it in behind yellow container, no, the Reyna will get dome from the side, which means that Protagonist is quickly left with the responsibility of saving the sniper once again.
But it's going to be very difficult as he has nothing but his knife out, as he will get cleaned up by Onhead. And Frebic, I mean, he's doing so well, and I mean, he's not the star player of his team, right? It's Buttsob, it's Beast, but yet Frebic is really showing up this game.
Yeah, and that's super scary, Dalha, because that means they have more players that can potentially be activated. Not only is it Frebic that can go wild, they can continue to add on to that. They can have Buttsob, they can have more players jump in and contribute, especially when it's going to matter most, especially if they can make it to the grand finals against Team Exploit.
And that's something that's always been a theme of Team Exploit, right? Them being so good with shooter, but all of their other players are very good as well. And we're seeing a version of Clarity that does the same thing.
Okay, Arrow, maybe they've gotten up out of their gaming chairs now. They're ready to punch down. Bring it down to a 4 versus 4. Spike starts to take down, looking for it, and the Viper Spit does catch a player, but not quite the bomb planter. 2 kills for him, and Arrow, now things have suddenly turned around. It's just one member left, trying to fight back, but caught with the utility, caught with their pants down, means that they will lose 2 members in the process, and Arrow finally get back on the board.
And what a round that was. I mean, playing against the Viper Spit for that retake, that's a very dangerous situation. It's so incredibly difficult to get that job done, but they were able to manage it. With Katak finding the only one to find anything there, with just 2 kills. But Clarity, they have a very large margin of error where they have such a huge lead over onto Team Arrow. They've already secured what seems to be, you know, the win conditions for the first half if you're on the attacking side on this map. Already 8 rounds secured.
Clarity are going back to the basics, hitting B's site as quickly as they can. The flashes allow them to slowly create space. Viper wall set up as well. And that has been the first kill collected. It hasn't really been the chaotic round that I expected it to be, but I think it's the calm before the storm. Arrow, they're getting all of their resources ready. And with the survive, it's going to be as close as possible.
They brought themselves back, though, turning it into a 4v5 from a 3v5. Oh, the
Clarity,
plant
yeah,
gets interrupted as well.
Yeah, they are
He's
not
finding
giving an
that
inch at all.
kill,
That
but
is...
Arrow, they're falling all over the place. Their revive not coming in handy as well, as all of them will fall. Protagonist, the only one finding anything there. And Clarity, they've managed to secure 9 rounds without even expending the Sage revive once.
That was such a flawless half from Clarity, honestly. If you consider the fact that Arrow had really dicey rounds even out of those 3 rounds, it's super unpromising. I'm not impressed by Arrow's performance right now at all.
I mean, you know, like you mentioned, the 3 rounds that they won, it's not as if they were in a decisive way. They had to fight tooth and nail for it. As Clarity have dealt significant amount of damage even in the rounds that they've lost. And now in the second half with a 6-round lead, despite this being an attack-sided map, it's enough of a lead for Clarity to feel very comfortable in their chairs right now.
Yeah, that really circles me back to that round where Arrow actually started with 5 members alive. They got all the kills, but then coming down to a 5 versus 2, they somehow still managed to let it come down to a 1 versus 1. And even that round was strategically played better by Clarity at the end of the day because the Frebic ended up finding himself on the back foot. He found himself on a flank. It was just missing a few shots that led to their demise. Otherwise, that would have been a 2 versus 5 clutch. So what do really Arrow have in terms of showing the viewers?
I mean, they have now on the attacking side, right? They have the Jet in the arena. Oh, but
okay.
is going to go in very aggressively. All 5 positions were revealed for Clarity, but they didn't manage to find anything just yet.
Oh, Beast is going to stay true to his name, get a double. And Katak?
Can't get the heal off though with that Viper wall being up.
Yeah, 3-on-2, Clarity. They've got the advantage once again, and if you're Arrow, you've got to be trembling in your boots. There's not a chance you're feeling comfortable with this, Talha. Action slows down, though, and I think they're about to meet. It's a bit of a crossroads at down middle. If Frebic peeks along with a teammate, perhaps they can catch a player. And Arrow have the pressure of making the first move.
The clock is ticking down on Arrow, though, with only 35 seconds remaining. They have to make something happen.
Beast.
As Clarity, they're approaching them from all
30
angles.
seconds left.
If Beast can thread himself behind the wall, perhaps he gets a chance to get the flank on them. This is where they start to connect. Okay, Arrow, they get the opening kill, but Beast has missed a few shots. No, never mind. He finally finds his footing, and the spike needs to go down immediately with so little time remaining. There's already a player watching that as well, and Beast can finish things off. Clarity already on double digits, Talha.
10-3 now, and I mean, the way they played that Clarity, they boxed Arrow into a corner, forced them out of time. And with Beast coming in for that flank, cleaning them all up, finding that neat little double kill, finding the heal as well. The timing window to stop the Reyna's heal is very short. Reyna needs the vision to get that heal off, and if you allow the heal to pop off, that's additional armor you're giving away for free. And now if you're Team Arrow, you must feel the pressure, you must feel the sweat trickling down your forehead.
Chaos ensues over towards the A site. Arrow, they've been battered, they've been continually punched down on. And I think Icebox was one of those maps that they were actually comfortable on, but all of that comfort has been taken away. Katak very casually mowing them down, and it's all going to be down to Beast, who very easily cleans things up. Janitorial services have been brought in, and Arrow have been put in the bin.
11-3 now, and Team Arrow just 1 round away from Clarity being on match point, and this is not how you want to go out. I mean, sure, it's a new and improved roster. Sure, Clarity have Batsahab, who is giving them all of this information on you. Sure, they have Beast as well, veteran players in addition to up-and-coming potential players, but it's still Team Arrow. You're still one of the big 3. You're still a top contender in the Valorant scene, and you need to show something for it.
The action just really doesn't stop, does it, Talha? It's Beast, it's Butsob, wherever you look on the scoreboard for Clarity. It's just damage. Arrow in the meantime, trying to garner the resources, maybe bring something together, but really, if you're Arrow, I think you've already discounted yourself, right? Because you've given up 12 rounds.
Yeah.
You've got 3 in the tank. Are you really gonna have the 9-round streak, this uphill against this uphill battle? No, absolutely not. I don't expect it to happen.
And I mean, now that they're on match point, now that their ultimates are up, Clarity Esports, it should be an easy first map for them. This is troubling. I mean, I don't think we've seen Arrow even struggle like this against a team like Team Exploit. They usually secure more rounds against them as well.
I want to see if the prospects of a new super team can finally come to light. Clarity once again ripping them apart. It's Butsob leading the fray this time around. And Arrow find themselves out of contention once more. 3 versus 4. They're going to have to pull off a miracle if they want to have a sizable comeback here. Protagonist looking for the first elbow, looking for a pixel, just anything that they can work with. And maybe Clarity give them a chance here. In they go. No, Butsob gets a kill before he falls, and on it, all he has to do is secure the final kill. Arrow, they're on the brink of losing map number 1.
You will not kill my ally.
And it's gotta come down to just this one member. No, there's still a revive in the tank, and that will allow them to get some more damage off, but it's all come down to one member once again.
Player standing.
There it is. Okay. Oh, no, I expected it to be a bit more, but no.
He was going for
It's
the
Clarity.
knife. The knife.
In such a dominant fashion as well, Talha.
Oh, man. Oh, man. I mean, you know, HSB said earlier that he's very confident no matter who comes up against him, but this performance by Clarity Esports, I've never seen them perform like this before, and it looks super convincing.
I think one of the major storylines, personally for me, was that Clarity have been leveling up in every game they play.
Yeah.
So for a lot of teams, before they get better, they're going to have these stagnant moments. And sure, as a franchise, as a brand, that might be true for Clarity. But this particular iteration of the roster, rather than the entire history of Clarity, it's improved incredibly. It's just been linear progress straight out of the gate. You beat a couple teams, you beat Salt, and now you're starting to beat Arrow. What's next?
Yeah, they're like a bunch of Super Saiyans. I mean, each time you defeat them, they come back stronger. And each of these players, I mean, it's not just team growth on its own, it's individual growth. I mean, look at Frebic. He stopped fragging, right? I mean, how is he doing it? He's just come so far from all of these tournaments that he's played alongside Katak. They're just looking super impressive.
Yeah, I think personal growth is probably the biggest factor here, right? Because they're really leveling up individually. Butsob having joined Clarity, now he's proven that he doesn't really need to have this veteran keeping a hand on his shoulder all the time just to make sure he's in check. No, it's Butsob fragging out. Frebic somehow with so little LAN experience, especially within Valorant, he can start fragging out like a madman. And all of the issues that we were generally associating with Clarity relating to not being experienced or not having too much time with this roster, none of them have really been showing up, especially in this particular game.
Yeah, it seems like some of the issues we were talking about with Clarity, like the inexperience, it sort of applies to Arrow in this regard, even though Arrow is the more veteran team, even though Arrow has the more veteran players on their side. And as far as captaincy is concerned, I think MSK is one of the most veteran captains out there. There's no one that beats him in terms of experience.
So what exactly is breaking down here, Talha? Because we didn't really see anything too particularly impressive from Arrow. We didn't see anything unorthodox, and it seemed like Clarity, time and time again, they could just get get Arrow's number. They had really well-timed pushes. They had these incredible A-side takes. They had these incredible B-side aggressions. They had a few fakes in there as well. So I really don't see anything that was missing from the pie.
They had a knife come through as well.
They had a knife?
On the main stage in the semifinals, that's has to build up your confidence quite a bit. But the good thing is this was Clarity's map. This is one of Clarity's favorite maps to play on, and the next one is Haven. Right, and that's one of Arrow's favorite maps. That's a map that even Team Exploit is ready to play against, and they're really going to have to turn it around on that map. I mean, it's a whole different strategy, and as far as the meta is concerned, Team Arrow have locked down the meta for that map, Haven, as best as anyone else has.
Yeah, I think so too, and especially because Haven is a very information-heavy map, so that is something that Arrow particularly really excels at. So when you've got players like MSK that are really good at driving out information, you know is going to have an impact on the server. But you know is one of those players, or at least it's one of those teams that has incredible Sovas. You can very easily have insane dart lineups that can fish out information from any corner of the map, and the one thing that particularly scares me, sorry to cut off my own train of thought there and take us into onto a wild tangent, but I think Haven is actually going to be really dangerous for Arrow. And that's because Clarity showed pushes, showed informational plays, and showed aggression that we simply didn't expect from Clarity.
Yeah, it almost seemed like Clarity were able to take the site scot-free. I mean, even in the rounds where Protagonist was able to get that opening frag, Clarity still managed to get that site. And they do it in a way that makes it impossible to go in for a retake. Team Arrow just don't have the manpower or the sufficient resources required to go for that retake. And Clarity, I mean, in terms of strategy, they're really hitting the mark there.
Yeah, we get a chance to look at the map MVP, and is it really a surprise that Frebic is the MVP? Yes, it is. Everybody knows that. Nobody expected Frebic to be the top dog.
Though, is that he has all of these kills, he's MVP, but he has only one first blood. That means he's not the one getting the opening frags, but he's the one doing all of the rest of the work.
Yeah, he's doing the heavy lifting. He's really acting as a rock for the team, when normally you would be expecting other players on the side of Clarity to be acting as rocks. You know, maybe you can see some of that from Beast, since you know he has that analytical brain, the kind of player that is touted to be playing against MSK. You know that maybe you would expect that burden to be taken by some of the duelists on Clarity, but no, it's Frebic in a very unorthodox finding, if anything.
Do you think Dazzler would be proud?
Dazzler would be proud.
Dazzler would be proud.
But apart from that, Talha, I think there were still quite a few prospects on the side of Clarity that really impressed us. So, like, any thoughts on that?
I mean, all of their players seem super impressive. I mean, like you mentioned, they seem to improve again and again and again. And they've come to a point where they've essentially, you know, established themselves as a contender for the big three. Previously, where they beat Salt Esports, you know, they've been trying to do that for a very long time. The last time they came close to it was in the Infinity Cup, where they lost 2-1 in that best of 3 series. But then they came back in this quarterfinal to eliminate Salt in the same fashion, in 2-1, except it was them winning out on that overtime. But now they've beat Arrow in this super convincing fashion. I mean, it's only been around 10 days since the quarterfinals, but this is a whole different team that we're seeing. This wasn't the performance that they showed against Team Salt, right? It's so much better, it's so much improved. I mean, back when they played against Team Salt, it wasn't Frebic who was top fragging.
I think Clarity's progression overall is very reminiscent of another team, and that is Salt. Because if you recall, nobody really thought of Salt as a particularly impressive contender, but then they came in, they beat a top dog, they ended up beating Exploit, and suddenly we're like, okay, how is Salt one of the main talking points in our conversation about the top teams in Pakistani Valorant? And I think Clarity are doing something very similar. They've beaten Salt, they've basically beaten the team that acted as a yardstick for progression like this one, and now they're going on to beat Team Arrow. They haven't done it yet. It's not something I'm entirely confident on just yet, because, you know, Arrow, maybe they have a bad map or two, but you're not allowed to have two. Just one bad map is okay. But now they're on the brink of achieving greatness. And the only thing that could potentially stop them is Exploit, because right now, Arrow, they do not look impressive.
They don't look impressive at all, but you know, if it's anything I know about MSK, it's his ability to form together, band together his team. It's his ability to take a hit, but keep on pushing back. And that's where I think Team Arrow is going to shine on the second map, where they are going to brush this loss off and they are going to make a comeback.
Absolutely, and I think there is quite a bit of action waiting for us. Perhaps it even goes to a map 3, but we're not at that point just yet. We're going to be back after just a short break for map number 2 so you can continue to watch the madness.
guys at Galaxy Race, a huge organisation that have just launched onto the esports ecosystem.
Galaxy Racer launched back in 2019 and has become one of the biggest esports gaming and lifestyle organizations globally. Galaxy Racer seems to be the center hub for all gamers.
DXR! 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 DXR!
The organization now carries over 100 content creators with a total reach of over 370 million followers across all platforms and more than, are you ready, 2 billion views.
हेलो दोस्तों, जिस दिन का इंतजार था वो आ गया। गैलेक्सी रेसर पाकिस्तान का इवेंट 8 और 9 जनवरी को 2022 पाकिस्तान चाइना फ्रेंडशिप सेंटर इस्लामाबाद में। आइए, खेलिए, जीतिए 2 करोड़ रुपए कैश। पाकिस्तान की तारीख का सबसे बड़ा ई स्पोर्ट्स टूर्नामेंट। Don't forget to be there. See you then. That's where the galaxy is going to be shining.
Hey! पायलट एग्जाम मिस नहीं कर सकता। उस ट्रेन पर चढ़ना है। पायलट इसे बनना है। गाड़ी हम छोड़वाएगा। Hey! पेट्रोल तो पूरा है, लेकिन ड्यू के बिना एडवेंचर अधूरा है। लेफ्ट, राइट। मेरी दादी इससे बेहतर गाड़ी चलाती है। तो खुद चला ले। Shortcut! Aw. Cute. देख, अब ये ट्रेन छूटनी नहीं चाहिए। तुझे तो ट्रेन पे चढ़ा के ही रहेंगे। No, 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 no. क्या? Thank you. नहीं, Mountain Dew. Come on!
Mountain Dew, यार हैं तो पार हैं।
Welcome back, everybody. You're watching Clarity versus Arrow. You're watching Gamers Galaxy presented to you by Mountain Dew, and you are watching madness. Talha, what did we just watch?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that Team Arrow even know what they saw in that match. I don't think they saw what came at them. I mean, I don't think I've seen a version of Clarity Esports like that. I don't think I've seen them play like that before. But man, what a pleasant surprise. They absolutely dominated Arrow, and like you said, you know, they didn't settle for anything less than domination.
Yeah, that was entirely crazy. I don't think we expected any of those theatrics. I mean, like, with the kind of domination we saw from Clarity, I mean, I think that they belong in some kind of Mountain Dew commercial, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it looked absolutely heroic. But moving on, what's the difference we want to see in Arrow, Talha? I'm going to put you on the spot here. What went wrong?
I mean, they simply can't allow the site to be taken over so quickly. And sure, if you allow the site to be taken over, you need to ensure that you have enough resources to go for that retake. You can't go for a retake in a 2v4 scenario. You can't go for a retake in a 3v5 scenario. You need to have your abilities up. You need to have the information going your way as well. And that was sort of the problem that we saw. Team Arrow, every time they went in for that retake, they were playing against information. They were playing against positioning. They had no utilities that they could use, and they simply got mowed down. It's a scenario in which you either don't allow Clarity that much space, or if you're allowing them that much space, then you need to have a way to counteract it.
Yeah, part of the reason that Clarity, I think space is the key word here, part of the reason that Clarity even came out on top is because they continually had well-timed aggression, both from the A and B site. They had this forked approach where they were able to gather information before Arrow could really find their footing. And even trying to contest down middle, Arrow would seldom find themselves in a spot where they can actually stop Clarity before too much information was gained. And surprisingly enough, when Arrow would try to go for defaults, Clarity would just hold it down. They'd be like, nope, we're not pushing. So, sure, there's a bit of luck in that, but really, you can't chalk up something like a 13-3 to luck.
Yeah, it did not seem like luck. I mean, it didn't even seem like luck when Clarity was playing against Salt Esports in the quarterfinals. It more seemed like preparedness and, well-timed execution coming out in favor of Clarity Esports. They simply got the better of the other team. And, Arrow has these duelists in the form of Protagonist and Godchild. Godchild himself does not play that duelist-centric role, does play other heroes like that Sky and that Killjoy, but does play them like a duelist, right? And they have the capacity to get those entry frags, but they need to keep those frags coming in. They need to keep on getting those kills. They simply can't just get one kill at the cost of losing 3 members.
Yeah, and now their insurance policy has been swept out from under them. They had a chance. No. It's down to already a map victory for Clarity, and now if Arrow drop the ball even once, they're gone. And in Clarity's mind, that bolsters their performance even further, because heading into a LAN, that's a kind of mistake you see a lot of new teams making. You're not going to go for aggression. You're going to try to play a very stale style of gameplay because you're like, okay, I can't go for anything too ballsy. I can't go for these plays which might cost me the game. But Clarity did the exact opposite for that. They're like, all right, you know what? We're going to go out guns blazing if we are going to. Instead, they're going for pushes. They're going for these super proactive plays. And they ended up working out. And now that they've managed to get a map in, the ability or their propensity to carry out more aggressive plays, it increases even further because they know they still have that insurance in the back pocket. They're not going to have to worry about just losing a map and being out of the server, unlike Arrow. And that in itself might actually mean that Arrow is even more passive and gives up even more space. So I'm super worried here, Daltrus, when we're playing a map that relies so much on information.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Clarity Esports, they must certainly feel that confidence coming in. It's the first time actually that they're playing from ahead rather than from behind. In both of the previous times where they went against Salt Esports in the Infinity Cup, where they lost 2-1, it was the second round or the second map that they had won and lost the first one. And even in the quarterfinals, if you remember for us, Salt was the one that won the first game. So it's really the first time that Clarity has won map number 1 against some of these bigger teams. So their confidence must be sky high.
Yeah, it's really a luxury they haven't been afforded before. And if you look at how Clarity played that first map, they actually had a bit of a comeback in the first couple of rounds. Okay, not a comeback, but they had an upset on that second round, right? So even after dropping the ball initially, they continued to power through. So that was absolutely crazy. And maybe we see some more of that madness when it comes to Haven. Heading into that second map, though, of course, do you have any thoughts about this, Talha? Do you think Arrow are going to switch things up? Have you seen anything in particular you maybe want to mention on Heaven?
I mean, they have picked themselves up that Killjoy, so it is very much a comfort pick for this map, able to secure one of these bomb sites. There are 3 of them, so you do want to be picking up those agents. You want as much information going your way as possible, so we do see the Sky for that as well. And this is really where Team Arrow needs to hit the mark. They need to have their information game on point. They need to have their positioning correct. Especially on a defensive side. I mean, they're already probably low on their confidence right now, having lost the first map in such a fashion. And upon this defensive map, upon this defense side of this map rather, it's super difficult because you do expect to lose out on more rounds in this first half if you're Team Arrow. But you can't let it snowball, not in the way that it happened in the first map.
Yeah, just generally having low confidence coming in from the first map and knowing you now have to also play the disadvantageous side. On top of that, you're playing a map that'll be very difficult to get past when you yourselves are on the attacking side, simply because Clarity are bolstered by their ability to now aggress now that they feel comfortable in doing so. And that too on a three-prong map where you can essentially have more than 2 pushes. That's something that's super scary. How is Arrow going to respond? And to be honest, Talha, I don't even expect you to have an answer for this because personally,
I haven't
wouldn't.
seen a version of Arrow that has faltered like this in a way, not even against Team Exploit. You know, Arrow's always been a team that does well even against Team Exploit. They've managed to secure 7, 8, 9 rounds against Team Exploit. And really, I don't remember the last time that it was this one-sided.
Absolutely, I think this is certainly a spectacle, and like I said before, it's reminiscent of Salt's progression. In fact, I would go ahead and say that this is even more impressive because when Salt ended up beating out 2 teams, I can't remember what it was. I think it was Arrow and it was Team Exploit. No, it was actually VRN back in the day that Salt ended up beating. The stakes weren't as high as they are now. So
yeah.
Clarity doing it in these massive online qualifiers with a massive prize pool like this one, with so much money up for grabs, it's just a testament to how good these players are and can further potentially be.
And I mean, the potential is there for both of these teams. I mean, the Valorant scene right now is sort of in a place where all of these top 4 teams, and you know, it's very ironic. Before, in some of the previous tournaments, I used to mention Clarity as a potential top 4 team. But right now, I think Team Clarity deserves to have their name as one of the top 4. I mean, they've worked super hard for it. They've beaten out Salt Esports. They've beaten out Team Arrow in map number 1. So I do think they deserve that position.
Yeah, I mean, only time is going to tell whether or not Clarity can continue to deliver, but before that happens, so it is going to be a while before the second map goes live. You want to delve into the history of Clarity a little bit? Because I know that for a lot of the viewers here, Clarity, sure, a new lineup, okay, we haven't really been following them too much. They got slapped around in a bunch of previous cups. But how did their entire lineup come to be?
I mean, initially, you know, there was Frebik and Khatak, and, you know, Shani, who's playing for Team Arrow. There was Swifty, Frebik, and Onhead obviously is a newer addition, and, you know, Dazzler, he's one of your closest friends, right?
Yes.
So they formed during Sky Esports, the 3rd iteration, but they didn't really have any sort of success. I mean, not in that competition. In fact, in the Calyx Cup or the Infinity Cup, any of the tournaments they played after that, they always managed to lose out in a massive way, in a very big difference, 2-0 score lines all throughout. But now we're seeing a version of them that actually brings it all together in this lineup, in this star-studded lineup, fusion of Clarity, Salt, and Arrow put together. And it's working out very well for them. But now we are going to head into the first game.
Well, the first round of map number 2, that's okay, Talha. I mean, it might as well be the first game or the first map with how quickly the first map ended. We don't really have too many memories of that. But Clarity, starting off on the attacker side, they want to take full advantage of what they've been given here. So much of their attention is concentrated around towards middle. And it seems like that is going to be their avenue of approach. Butsaw, first man in, using his teammate's flashbang to allow himself comfort here. 15 HP on him as he finally starts to get the spike down, but the damage has been done. It comes down to a 5 versus 5 retake, and Clarity, they actually have a pretty nice stronghold on this site, Talha. But look at this. Godchild has managed to get the first kill, which means that avenues have been opened up, trying to get the defuse down so that they have to peek. They've given up their positions, and Godchild continues to deliver. Really awkward duel, missing a lot of shots. Do you have rocks in your mouse, man? How's that lagging? No. Arrow, they still managed to come out on top. And it is with 3 members alive. Nice and clean round for Arrow, and an excellent retake.
Yeah, and at Clarity, I mean, they chose to execute on the B side of all places going into the pistol round. It was very interesting. I think the objective there was just to secure the spike plant going out. But Sahab, you know, he knew that his position, he was pinned down, he was going to fall anyway. I don't think they expected Frebic to get taken out so quickly. I think he still had a flash or a stun available in his inventory that he wanted to use. But all in all, it was slightly sloppy from Team Arrow, particularly Godchild missing those few shots. But all in all, you know, they did
Yeah,
win.
I mean, all's well that ends well, but it's not going to end well for Arrow if they continue making mistakes like this one because, well, Clarity, they are a team that will quickly fight back. Godchild now showing us why he was once in contention to be one of the best players in Pakistan. He saves him on the pistol round, he gets a double on the opener, and maybe, just maybe, Haven will turn things around, Talha.
Oh, but Beast managed to find himself in a very nice position, but Shani is going to take him out. 2 rounds now. And Arrow, they are coming back after their first defeat in the best of 3. This is what we want to see, but, you know, again, like you mentioned, they can't make many mistakes. They can't let Clarity get ahead. But this looks like this should be the round going in favor of Clarity, as they have picked up those 3 Phantoms alongside those 2 Vandals against the 4 Spectres of Arrow Gaming.
Revealing it.
Clarity. Playing a bit of a default here, and that could have actually worked out for them incredibly because Arrow initially wanted to go for a push around the C site and maybe have some aggression on A as well. But no, realizing quickly that Clarity are trying to hold their horses there, they're going to quickly return to passivity as well. And it is going to be a while before Clarity actually decide to hit a bomb site. But Saab, separated from the pack. He is the hound that is destined to take the first bite, and he's going to have to take it out of Godchild. MSK tags him. There it is. The drone should be confirmation that an ace side hit is about to come through, which will allow Arrow to go for premature rotations, especially considering there's only 40 seconds on the clock. Clarity finally get the spike down, and it's about to be mayhem.
Yeah, it's a 5v5 retake situation as Protagonist has made his way on to the heaven. But it's constantly being smoked out. The Cyber Cage now, before it was the Astral Smoke, as Team Arrow are going to make their way in.
Yeah, here it comes. Here comes the bird to signal war. Butsob with the first frag. MSK tries to get a bit more done, but no, he's only good for 1. The bullets will fly across the server, but they'll come out on top for Clarity. The first round for them. And Talha, it's so impressive to me that Clarity are putting up such a performance, especially when it kind of seems like they're even playing against most of the fans, right? Because there's so much support for Arrow, and Clarity just being a relatively new roster, they don't really have that kind of backing.
They don't have that kind of backing, but you know, their players, their supporters, they support each other so well. I mean, they always manage to get the trades off. And that's really key. When you're going into a 5v5 retake situation, you need to get those trades off. And Arrow, that retake was slightly, you know, just very slightly a bit sloppy. But they have another chance at it, as it will be the first gun round, the first proper gun round coming out.
Oh, you can see that they try to play off of the early information, and Godchild, maybe he could have done more off of that, but Butsob and Kadak, they've gotten 1 apiece. That's the A side being given up, and desperate rotations will eventually be called. The smokes are the only thing that stops this action from happening, along with the rotation starting to come through. Another kill added. On hit. The man who was looking for a team might have just found his footing, and he continues to deliver. 2 more kills for them, and that means Clarity have gotten it to a tie. Are they going to immediately bounce back like they did on the first map?
I mean, both of these times, Arrow has given away the site scot-free. I mean, in the previous round, before this one, it was a 5v5 retake, so they got that thing correct, right? They went in for a retake with as many resources as they could. It still didn't work out for them. And last time, they went in for a 4v2 retake situation. One of their players was stuck on the heaven, could not back away. One of their players in the defender spawn side could not back away. And it's really not the position where you want to be playing into. But now you have the Killjoy lockdown available, but the only caveat is the Sova's Hunter Fury is ready to counter it.
Standing ahead.
Look at how Clarity are playing this. They have butt sub slowly pushing on the A side, and because Arrow are going for a heavy short take, it means that butt sub will be able to catch 2 players in the back potentially. Now, it's obviously a relatively low-pressure round for Arrow. Okay, Protagonist, can he do more with that shot? No, Frebic immediately bounces it back. And things have been brought together once again for Clarity, inching towards that advantage.
As long as Katak is alive, the Killjoy lockdown can't come out. And they know this, as Katak is keeping himself safe. The spike plant again for the 3rd time, going to come onto the A side with on ahead coming from that flank, taking out Godchild. As Frebic finishes it off with a 4K. This man, I mean, he's in absolute form. Not just the MVP of last time around, but you know, if he continues on like this, he might just end up as MVP of this series.
And what a way would it be to start off the first day of Gamers Galaxy. I mean, this man, or this team, this entire team rather, they're showing us incredible signs of promise. I think they've actually already cemented themselves as the Big Four. It really just comes down to inching out another win, inching out a win against Arrow, and showing us that they're not just rookies that are going to struggle on land, no.
Protagonist, though, he's picked himself up an operator, and it did not work out in the last map. It's a very expensive purchase, so it has to work out now. But with all of these smokes, with them having the Cypher and the Astra available, it looks like a very difficult position to play with the operator. As the entirety of Team Arrow are forced back as the plant comes on towards the A site for a 4th round in a row.
This is going to be such a chaotic retake, Talha. The Astral Stars have been set up, which makes things a bit harder. And the spike has ticked down quite far, so any plays they make now, they're going to look very desperate, trying to clear out the corners, but the gravity wall keeps them at bay. It means that it's wasted quite a bit of time, but MSK, he does damage before he finally falls. Shani retaliates in kind, gets the player off, and there it is. Clarity once again, down to the 1 versus 1. It's Katak that steps up.
Katak. Oh man, I mean, they went in with all of that utility, but they did not count on that gravity well, just completely putting a halt to their plans. As the entirety of Arrow were forced to back away, and that operator could not find anything. No one even entering in that scope. As is Katak, who's, you know, but I think he's been inspired by his teammate Frebic.
Yeah, I think so few people put response. Oh, I'm gonna have to scratch that thought because Gottschall's been overwhelmed, and I think there's a lot more coming where that came from. On to C-side they go. They've gotten a fair bit of information as well. Katak's managed to get a kill on Clarity. They've continued their winning ways. This might just be a repeat of map number 1 with the way Clarity are playing this out. Spike starts to go down, and Arrow now with this massive responsibility of threading a retake where there are very few opportunities. Protagonist, the knives are out. Can they come out to play? No. Quickly put back in their sheets, but it has actually made it. No, I started to think, I started to hope.
It's these sloppy retake situations that Arrow are finding themselves in, not having the resources to go in for that retake and still choosing to execute on it. It's a lackluster attempt, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work against this version of Clarity. where it's not Butsahab that's doing the heavy lifting, it's actually Frebik and Katak. He has 12 kills. 12 kills. In only 7 rounds. No one even on double digits except for this lad.
This might be one of the first few opportunities where Arrow have gotten early information so they can at least start to prime their defense. But even then, they only know where Butsahab is coming, and that's a position he's consistently taken for the past few rounds, where he pushes up A, and even if the rest of his team is not following, that's okay, because he's good enough for the pressure.
And this is really the player that Arrow were probably prepped for, right? They were probably hoping that Clarity would play around Butsahab, enable their duelist, but they don't have to just yet. As Butsahab, he's not the one fragging out, but now the Hunter's Fury comes out, so that means a lockdown can be placed by Team Arrow should they choose. As there's no Hunter's Fury to take it out. Instead, the protagonist has another operator. The second one did not work out. The first map did not work out for Trick in his match against Exploit. But it has to work now.
Okay, protagonist. That's something we've been missing. We saw him have a bit of a shaky performance in the quarterfinals, where he was good in some games, shaky on the others. But that op has got to be put to good use if Arrow wants to have a bit of a comeback going. Butsahab brings the numbers closer once again, but with only 15 seconds on the clock, the spike has been brought down on a site.
Arrow has the lockdown though. Oh, and it's going to come out now. It's going to force them all the way back, but they've used it on the defender's spawn side, so the mid position is not going to be much of a deterrence. The Astral Divide is also going to come out, and that should make it for a very easy defuse, but they're still having a bit of difficulty with it, as Frebik is going to find the kill onto Godchild. And actually another onto Shani. Arrow still not able to find a defuse, as Beast will run into his death, and that's going to be the defuse, as Frebik will find a third kill, but protagonist will be the one to find a defuse. But still,
that's a good save. I mean, the Astral Divide is the only thing that even allowed Arrow to get the round. And the thing that really worries me,
and they still, you know, one of the problems that we had with Arrow's gameplay in the first map was even the rounds that they won, they still took quite the hit for it. And the last round was the same as well, coming out ahead with just one player alive, having expended 3 of your ultimates. That's very costly.
Yeah, one thing that is still kind of okay for me, or okay in my books as far as Arrow is concerned, is that they're playing on the defender side. So anything they can scrape together that might be worth more than whatever Clarity is putting up right now. Butsahab, he goes for such a quick play initially there, not expecting it, and that means that Arrow immediately falls, and with the Astral Divide being set up as well, it's only a matter of time before the spike goes down and the round goes to Clarity. It's such a difficult retake to thread yourself through.
There's absolutely no way across that Astral Divide. And if you're Arrow, no ultimates to your name. Just the captain is down as well, and who's going to lead them for this retake now? As the spike is going to continue to tick away, as Arrow backs away, trying to go for that save.
Yeah, Talha, I think that there's not even, it just goes without saying, right? Butsahab was the MVP of that round. He just walks in, gets 2 kills. The rest of his team really didn't even have to do anything except just serve as a distraction in the form of their existence, because they're like, okay, yeah, we can't just be checking for Butsahab. We can't have 5 players watching A just for Butsahab. He walks in, nice and easy double kill. And the
thing is, you can really see the desperation, because they're going for saves on a Spectre. Godchild saved a Spectre, right? It's not an operator. It's not a heavy assault rifle like the Vandal or a Phantom. It's not an ideal weapon to be saving. I mean, it really doesn't do much if you're transferring it forward. You get that many credits to buy the Spectre anyway, should you lose.
It really just shows that Arrow are starting to deteriorate. They're breaking down. And all of that veterans experience is really not helping them out right now. Clarity, a team full of young blood, is dominating them at the moment.
Oh, the Breach ultimate is going to zone all of Arrow back. And again, it looks like a free site for Clarity. The Hunter's Fury will come out as well, but Matsab has a very nice
They're not even
position,
letting them
but
plant.
Protagonist is going to get that kill. As Onhead is the only one to find anything. 2k for him, but he will fall as well. As the Sova, the only one alive.
Okay, now we can get the conversation started. Arrow, still looking pretty close in rounds.
They showed some of the swiftness that Clarity has been demonstrating throughout this series, right? Going in for that retake, going in a very convincing and swift fashion, just taking them all out before they know what's coming for them, before they knew what hit them.
I really like this change of pace from Arrow, right? Because instead of waiting for Clarity to do their magic, they're actually proactively taking charge of it. I love that. Maybe we can see a little bit more of that from Arrow when it comes time for them to play on the attacker side. We are going to be seeing a tactical timeout. Good decision from either team to take a tactical timeout. I mean, there are arguments to be made for either team wanting one, because if you're looking at it from the perspective of Arrow, now that they've got 4 rounds, they need to pace themselves, want to make sure they can get this final round in the bag before they go on over to the next half. And
yeah, 5 rounds should be a good first half for Arrow on this map.
At least get to 5 rounds, maybe 6 if you're lucky, if you're playing the side, and then once you get to the attacker, things are going to be a bit more smooth sailing, but I think just the threat of being knocked out in one map now, that could potentially get to Arrow, and the pressure of making decisions on the attacking side will really test MSK's mettle.
I mean, MSK's mettle has been tested time and time again, and he hasn't disappointed us so far. I hope that this won't be the day. Clarity have the Cypher link up though. So, Arrow, they can't let any player fall. They have to stick together, or at least as close together as possible. But it's so difficult on this map as the sites are so dispersed. 3 sites available, which means only one player will be on one of these sites.
Clarity, they've got their eyes set on middle. Butsob quickly.
Oh, he forced out a lot of utility.
Yeah, he taps the bomb just to try to make sure they use up some of their util, but Protagonist quickly manages to respond to that with an op kill of his own. Now, player damage hasn't really been done to Arrow, but Clarity have managed to get a fair bit of information before they start to head into a bomb site.
Here.
Clarity, they're choosing to go in to the garage.
Oh Godchild, he's about to be tested. The only thing stopping
30 seconds left.
stopping their vision is the smoke. He even takes out the recon dart, but he has to give up his position for it. Through the smoke, they get a couple kills, but immediately responding in kind and Clarity are able to make things very tough for Arrow. And the spike shouldn't be too difficult to bring down. Clarity, don't even let it get to that though. They don't even let it get to that.
How did they do that? All 3 players were stuck inside that smoke, pinned down by Arrow, and yet they were able to clear out all of those angles, able to clear out a defender spawn side the garage, and Onhead was able to come up with that flank, getting those 2 players. But Arrow, they need this last round. They absolutely should be looking to secure this, even though it's an attack-sided map.
Yeah, Protagonist tries to claw their eyeballs out, and he manages to get one. Onhead is the first one to receive a bit of a scuffle. But Arrow, it's a 1-for-1 trade, and Clarity can choose their own battles. But look at this flank that's potentially brewing. Is it something that Clarity will be checking out for? Slowly but surely, their rotation going to the C side. This will be really problematic, Talha, because although a player has managed to make their way all the way in, no, it's Shani gets checked because they're rotating. That flank would have worked perfectly if they were heading to the A or B site, but no.
Oh, but look at this, look at this, look at where they're going. As Team Arrow, they're scrambling to find where they need to go. It's 3 bomb sites, 3 players remaining. Just
Oh, this
too
is actually
little
not a bad
resources.
read at all. They've quickly tucked a player into A. There's the information. I is ready for it, but he could have done more off of that, Talha. Kata quickly responds to any bullets flying his way, and Arrow now
Remaining.
have left it all on the shoulders of one frail Killjoy.
And what can he do without the
planted.
lockdown available? Godchild. Oh, his location was revealed as well. This was not going to end well for him, as he has no choice but to make his way into the site against the 3 players who have perfectly positioned themselves to stop this rotation. Will be able to take down one, taking out Frebic with a neat little headshot, but he has 2 players to take care of. He's going to place the alarm bot, which is going to get taken out, so he has that information as well. But he has a reasonable idea where both of them are, but Beast, he's going to feast on Godchild as
Switching
Clarity
sides.
close it out in an 8-4 fashion.
Now, Talha, this may seem really unnerving, but Arrow, at least they've got the attacker side advantage. But to be perfectly honest, with how dominating Clarity have looked, I have very little faith left in Arrow. I need to see those first couple of rounds before we can light out a candle for them.
It's the pistol round, so they really need to win this pistol round. They're on the attack side. There's no Killjoy on Clarity's side, right? No turret to deter them. As another tactical timeout comes out. I mean, if Arrow lose this round, then they'll be playing from a 10-4 position unless they go for a force buy after this.
And man, even if they end up winning this round, Clarity's ability to convert rounds that generally shouldn't be going their way is incredible. So there's quite a bit of work to do for Arrow. Not only do they have to fight this uphill battle on this map, they've also got to take it all the way to map number 3, but here's where the action starts. Beast on the receiving end, manages to cast a spike, but no, they immediately walk into the site and quickly take out 2 in kind. It's Arrow in a 4 versus 3 spot. Clarity,
Spike planted.
they're not quite locked out. They've got many different avenues they can approach from, but they will be moving in from A and C link.
But subs very low though, only 40 HP. Makes it 2.5 players to take care of.
Oh, it doesn't really get the timing right. Onhead gets punished for his aggression, and Protagonist really putting that frenzy to good use. The pistol round is basically guaranteed now. Kata, all right, you can maybe get a scratch on your opponents before you head out, but don't let the door hit you.
One enemy remaining.
Oh, what? Okay. It looked for a second he was going to get the last kill as well.
Yeah. But regardless, the bomb, the spike had already ticked all the way down, so it's not really too big of a deal if you're in the shoes of Arrow. But now there's still a 3-round deficit that they have to get past, and when you're playing against a team like Clarity that time and time again have proven that even Spectres aren't really something that takes them out of the fight, I'm worried.
Definitely, and I mean, you know, going from a 4v2 scenario to a 1v1 scenario, that's very difficult, considering the fact you already had the spike planted down.
Blinded.
And now 8 and 5 as Clarity attempted to make a very aggressive play on towards Ceylon, but that got quickly punished as they are forced to go back. It's an eco though, so this should be a round going in favor of Arrow. They shouldn't give too much for it though.
It's a very split up round because neither of these teams have all of their resources in one position. Locations being revealed makes things a bit harder for Team Arrow. But now with the spike down, oh no, that is so much information being given now before Clarity go for the retake. And we've seen this position before, Talha. It can get dicey very quickly. And moving in from multiple angles, there's a flank, there's a player in heaven, and there's a player in defender spawn as well. How does Arrow respond to this? They've got to win every single fight, but Sob and Beast They're continuing to devour their opponents. It's only one member left, and this final Sky can't do anything. Clarity, once again, have turned around a round full of SMGs.
With the Stinger, nonetheless. Beast came in with a Stinger getting that 3K. I mean, it looked like Arrow had that one in the bag, and they just simply whiffed it as Clarity were able to go for that retake. It seems like that A side, it's very dangerous if you're playing against Clarity. They seem to do very well on it on both the attacking and the defensive side.
And look at what Arrow has been dealt now.
How
Their
many
hands
kills does
bust.
Kartik have?
They've got pistols, yes.
Is Kartik on a 5 KDA?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Get out of my way!
Regardless of what it is, there's been incredible performances individually from everyone on Clarity, but look at where Arrow is headed. Okay, they've got Protagonist who's playing around with his ultimate, wastes quite a bit of it, and with only pistols they managed to get onto the C site, so knowing they're playing close angles, this is still something that's marginally doable. But these SMGs aren't going to make things easy. Protagonist, okay, first skill collected. Does Beast do anything more off of this?
Right there.
I think he saw a barrel there behind the box. Shouldn't be too long before all the resources of Clarity start huddling onto the C site. These smokes aren't going to make things easier either. Katak wants to make sure he can scope them out early on, but the Killjoy utility keeps them off the bomb for a little bit longer. The Sky cannot deter them for any more. The spike destined to be defused. Oh, that too?
I think Gotchad had a knife out. I think he was very much done with that round.
Yeah, just gave up.
Clarity now 10-5. I mean, Arrow still have a way to come back into this. It's a gun round, but it might be one of their last gun rounds if they lose this one. They won't have the economy to recover from this.
I actually want to... I'm actually really interested in seeing how this MVP thing is going to roll out at the end of the game, because Clarity, while they were progressing on the metrics you expect teams to progress on, you know, okay, you're enabling your players, you're getting a lot of rounds, all of that stuff. So many indicators have changed. Now they're having players step up where we simply didn't expect them to.
Yeah, I did not expect this from Frebic and Katak. I mean, they're wonderful players, as I've been following them for quite some time now, but did not expect them to put a performance like this. But now Team Arrow, they're moving in again on towards that A site. But they have to be careful.
Arrow, you can see they're doubting their every move. They feel no comfort on heading onto a site, but they've got it now. It's do or die, but the first player has already done the latter. Godchild quickly responds. It has been brought to a 4 versus 4 where they've got the spike down, but with utility quickly expiring, it's not going to be easy to hold any angle down. Katak quickly one-ups the opposition, and that puts Arrow in a spot where they're in a very disadvantageous 3 versus 4, with Sky also being low on HP. The utility is being readied up, Molotovs and flashes to clear angles out. Katak continues to deliver, and there's so little that Arrow can do, man. It's just chaos. It's Clarity time and time again.
It's Frebic and Katak as a duo going together. I mean, is this the start of another duo combination that takes the Valorant scene by storm? You know, sort of like Trans and Criminal, or HSB and Shaka. But this is an absolute disaster for Team Arrow. They have no more leeway to make any more mistakes. 11-5 now, as another tactical timeout will come out. But what do you even say to your players now if you're MSK? How do you even bring them back to this?
All right. It is I, MSK, preparing a speech for my teammates.
Am I your teammate?
Yes.
I'm giving up.
Oh, God. Why would you say that, though?
But no, I mean, like I said, if it's...
I didn't even get through my speech, and you're like, all right, I give up. See ya. All right, continue.
But,
go on.
you know, like I said, if it's anyone that can band them together, if it's anyone that can band a team together, it is MSK. And he's done it before. And he can still do it now.
It's really just about seeing one step at a time. Because right now, there's no coach in the world who can tell you exactly what to do. All they can tell you to do is focus on that current round, see where this leads you, and focus on one little detail at a time.
Here.
And now Team Arrow, they're changing it up a bit. Not going towards that A side just yet. Instead choosing to rotate towards that long C-long position. This protagonist is going to lead the fray with that bird. Flash sound not being given off, so they don't have any information as of yet. But they have control of the site now.
Okay, maybe they can show some promise here, because this is a round where they've relatively cleanly managed to get the spike down. The Gotchild gets checked here. Nope. Well, yes, Gotchild doesn't get a chance to respond. I thought he might have gotten a few more shots in, but Clarity just continuing to dish out the damage. Protagonist teaming up with 8ZI to go proactively take down the duels, and okay, they've brought it a lot closer together, and Beast is sticking down the defuse. It's halfway done. Doltrus, they continue to hold it down, and it's 12 points on the board for Clarity. Just one round away from toppling the Green Giants.
They expended so many resources to protect that C-long position, to protect that flank. They completely forgot about the spike. It was smoked off. Double smoked off rather, with the Cyber Cage and that Astro Smoke, and Onhead was able to get that diffuse. That was a complete outplay by Clarity Esports. I mean, that flank, in addition with that diffuse, Team Arrow are just one round away from heading back home. But Protagonist has done this before. Protagonist has kept Arrow from elimination before. Can he do it again?
You can already see that you can already hear the bags being packed on the side of Arrow. That's how close Clarity are to tasting victory.
They took their captain out first for us.
Oh, that's gonna be gruesome. There's no avenue that Arrow can actually thread themselves through. Clarity going for a bit of a passive approach this time around, with only having one member going for some aggression towards the A-long area to establish control. But with only 45 seconds on the clock, these might be the most important last few seconds that Arrow have ever had to deal with. The lockdown at least gives them something to approach with, but Beast wants to stick around. He wants to stay close to the action. 8ZI gets a kill, but there's bodies flying across the board from Arrow. Last man standing, there's nothing he can do. It's just one man alive. How can he keep them in the game? It's really too tough of an ask for anyone, and Gotchild cannot be the one to do it. Arrow, or rather Clarity, are your grand finalists.
And I mean, they came in the quarterfinals to defeat Salt Esports in 2-1, but they only got stronger as now they defeated Arrow in what was a stomp for the first game, and an evenly convincing performance by Katak and Frebic for the second game. As Arrow will be eliminated from this competition and will be sent packing home. As Clarity, they're looking happy and as confident as ever. You can hear the screams in the crowd. You can hear them on the stage. Absolute champions. It's going to be interesting to see what both of these teams, both of their representatives have to say about this matchup. I do not think that Clarity expected Arrow to go down like this. I mean, I think they expected more of a competition coming out from them. But it is friendly competition, as you know, the circuit, it's like one giant family. As all of these players, they will hug it out, they will shake their hands as they exit stage. we are going to hear some words.
But Saab, you've just
The
made
winner.
it to the grand finals. You've beaten out the green giants that are Arrow. How are you feeling about this one?
I'm feeling super good, man. I can't even speak because my neck is throat is so hurting by that screaming and stuff. And I'm so lucky to have them on my team. My team played amazing, especially everyone on my team played amazing. All the credit goes to my team. They were amazing in this game. And yeah, I'm just lucky to have them in my roster, man.
That is crazy. I mean, Clarity's progression has been so amazing. I think everybody's been talking about it from the bottom. With this new roster iteration, you guys have nearly made it to the top. But that's the big asterisk. You guys are going up against Exploit next. How are you feeling about that?
Yes, the thing is we weren't preparing that much for Arrow because we knew we were going to face Exploit in the finals. So we are super ready for them. And we're going to try our best to take the trophy home.
Is there anything in particular you guys have already have been planning in advance for Exploit? Did you expect to make it this far, Batsab?
Yes, we have some tricks up our sleeves as of now. And yes, we are going to implement them in the finals.
Well, I'm really excited to see you guys in the grand finals with that crazy performance. You guys absolutely deserve it. But heading into the finals, is there anything you'd like to say to maybe the old fans, the guys that believe in you from the start, the ones that believed in your teammates from the start, and maybe all the new ones that you're going to have now?
There's a lot I can say, but I'm kind of speechless right now. So I'll just say thank you, everyone, for the support, for believing in me, especially my family, which is watching from home right now. I know that. So thank you so much for the support.
Well, thank you, Batsab. That was an absolute... That was absolutely amazing to watch, and man, I cannot see this. I cannot wait to see this guy in the grand finals.
Can I make a shout out real quick for the boy?
Let's do it. Let's hear that shout out.
अहमद भाई, यानी बिलीव किया था ना, इधर आ गया.
Oh man, that is so sweet. You know, he's not forgetting the fans anytime soon, and you're not going to be forgetting his face because he's going up against Exploit in the grand finals. Could this be the team to finally do it?
And I mean, you heard it from Clarity. I mean, you know, they're very thankful to all of their supporters who have followed them all the way through. And I think this should gain them quite a few supporters as well, you know, coming out to beat Team Arrow. First it was Salt, now it's Arrow. And they should be looking confident for their match against Team Exploit.
Yeah, I think so. If you're in their shoes right now, you've got to be feeling crazy. You've made it to the finals. What more can you ask? Especially with this kind of a landslide. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I did not expect it. But, you know, it's not only Clarity who are looking confident, it's Team Exploit as well. As HSB mentioned in his interview, he's confident regardless of who comes up against him, whether it's MSK and his team, or whether it's Katak and Frebic and their team.
Yeah, but I think there's so much that we have to dissect about this game, Talha, because, I mean, although it was a pretty one-sided affair, I think we saw a lot of breakdowns happening on the side of Arrow, and I do want you to talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I did not expect Arrow to falter in that fashion. I mean, we saw some rounds where they were able to take a decisive win, but that it was more Clarity dictating the pace of the game throughout both of those maps. Clarity dictating which site is going to get hit. Clarity dictating how many resources will Arrow have for their retake. Clarity dictating just how they want to be using those ultimates. I mean, it seemed like throughout all of it, the pace of the game, whether it was slow, medium, or fast, it was entirely determined by Clarity.
Yeah, I think so as well, and it really didn't matter what side they were on, right? You just mentioned that, Talha. It's whether they were on the defending side, they ended up going for multiple different pushes. They managed to control even the pace of Arrow's defaults, and it really seemed like from the start, as soon as they upset in the second round, a couple times actually with SMGs, they'd already gotten in Arrow's heads.
Yeah, and I mean, Arrow is not an easy team to stress out or put the pressure on. You know, MSK is a veteran, and true to his name, he's not someone who succumbs to pressure that easily. So the fact that Clarity were able to make that happen against them, were able to mount up the pressure, suggests to me that when we talk about the big three, we have a new, we have a new kid on the block. We have Clarity Esports who, normally a team doesn't simply jump from the 4th best or the 5th best position to suddenly being the 2nd best, but that's exactly where Clarity are right now.
Yeah, you never really see many teams have this linear progress. You never really see them go up a staircase. It's usually a bunch of hills, and then they actually they fall down a few of them in the process as well. But that's not the case for this particular iteration of Clarity's roster. They've continued to deliver. They've continued to decimate teams time after time, and they've only got one team remaining. They've only got to dethrone the top dogs of the Pakistani Valorant scene, and that is Team Exploit. Talha, how do you think tomorrow's game is going to go?
I mean, if Clarity continue playing like this, if Clarity continue improving, it's not so much of the fact that Team Exploit may have some tough competition tomorrow. It's the fact that almost certainly in some point in the future, Team Exploit will have competition. Team Exploit simply cannot ignore the rest of their competition anymore.
Absolutely not, especially a lot of these players on Clarity are quite young, so that really showed us the potential of what we could eventually see within the Pakistani Valorant circuit. These players, now they're showing signs of promise, being young talents. They're eventually going to be the veterans on the server, and it is really crazy to see a future like that, Talha. But we are going to be getting a chance to look at the map MVP, and this time around we get a different flavor. It's not Frebik leading the charge, it's Katak. And both MVPs have been players that we really didn't expect to see on the top. You thought there was going to be Butsab, you thought it was going to be another player, but no.
And again, like Frebik, he only has 1 first blood despite having 25 first kills. That means most of those kills were in between of those rounds. Most of those kills were after the action had already started. And that's what's more impressive. The fact that you can constantly get those trades out, the fact that you don't leave any stone unturned is really what separates you from your competition.
And I think what it also signifies is that they've really played their roles well in terms of hardcore roles. So if you're looking at Butsab, yes, he was getting so many first bloods, but not really being expected to get that many kills is something that comes along with the burden of being an entry fragger, right? And that's okay. It's not like he has to frag out wildly as long as he can get 7 or 8 first bloods. That's opening up the sights. That's good enough for the rest of his team. And because they can act like rocks, because they can collect every other kill that is available on the server, everything works in unison. And even if you look at the stat spread, of the teams across the board, I think Clarity, they're still a lot closer in contention as opposed to Arrow, where they really look lackluster in terms of fragging potential. And so some of the players that we potentially expected to be stepping up, they really didn't. You saw MSK not really fragging out like you expected him to. AZI looked mostly absent from the server. Protagonist, his op had a couple highlight plays, but those were in the form of maybe a single opening frag or perhaps a double. But
that operator was expensive, considering the fact that, sure, he didn't manage to find use for it the first time he got it, but he grabbed it around 3 times, right? And he did not make up for it.
And not at all. We didn't see a single highlight play. And when we were watching the online action when it comes to Valorant, I think Protagonist was basically a bit of a highlight machine, if anything. You would continually see him fragging out like a madman. He would be showing up, and he would often be found at the top of the scoreboard. But that's not the case anymore. Well, I mean, it might be in terms of pure fragging potential, but he's not as far apart from the pack as he's normally familiarized us with.
Yeah, I mean... And, in contrast to what you just said, Clarity Esports, they're very well within, their score lines are all evenly balanced from all of these players. Katak, sure, he has 25 kills, but the rest of his team is not so far off. Frebik, we saw him get so many frags as he's only 4th on his team's scoreboard, and that's absolutely massive. But over on Arrow's side, there's such a massive discrepancy between these kills. Some of their players didn't even manage to scratch the 10K mark, and that's disturbing.
Yeah, if you're Arrow, I think you've definitely dropped the ball here, but I feel like too many things really fell apart at the same time for Arrow. I think MSK, his general ability to act as a rock for the team, it failed to turn up on the server. I don't think he was really able to handle the situation with regards to having clear communication, because there were so many random pushes that they were unable to account for, and even in a lot of these retake scenarios, you saw them really sort of getting into position but not being able to close things down, which really tells me that communication was not present within the game. Mid-round calls weren't present or something of that sort. So I think individually a lot of these players had breakdowns.
Yeah, and when you talk about the lack of communication, that's really where Arrow's strength lies, in the fact that their communication game is very strong, and the fact that MSK, he's a sort of captain that likes to lead his team, and the fact that he wasn't able to do this time around, it's slightly disappointing, but it's Team Arrow, right? They've been in the scene for the longest time. It's MSK, he's been an FPS player for the longest time, and their potential to come back, their potential to stay strong and keep their head held high is very much there, and I do hope that this loss doesn't get to them.
And Talha, talking about not letting a loss get to you, obviously I think being the biggest tournament Pakistan has ever experienced, this is going to ruffle some feathers, because this effectively changes everything we know currently about the Pakistani Valorant scene.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen Salt being knocked out. We've seen now Arrow being knocked out before they got to the grand finals. So are we suddenly seeing Clarity in an entirely new spot? Are they really contesting for the throne?
I mean, I do think that Team Exploit, will have a very tough competition. I do think that it's going to not be a landslide victory for Team Exploit. And certainly, Team Clarity, they do look a lot stronger than Team Fear Legends did. So at the very least, they should be getting 1 or 2 maps over Team Exploit.
And I think this is one of the storylines that would really... well, for me personally, it really messes with my head, because coming into this tournament, I expected Fear Legends to be the one dark horse which would surprise everybody with their performance, but it wouldn't be an unexpected performance, at least for the discerning eye, on the basis of the fact that they have LAN experience and they had veterans on the team that could guide the younger players. But on the flip side, instead you're seeing Clarity with really no reason to be this damn good on the LAN come out on top. So how does that even happen, Talha?
I mean, I don't know, man. It's just improvement upon improvement upon improvement, as Khatak and Frebic have gotten better each and every single time that they've played together. And despite of the fact that Dazzler has left the crew, Clarity, they're still quite strong. I mean, it seems like a star-studded superstar team, in the form. They have Beast, a core member of Salt. They have Batsahab, a core member of Arrow. They have 2 players, founding members of Clarity Esports, Khatak and Frebic, who on their own accord have performed exceptionally. And on his debut in this arena today, he played a wonderful game. So it does seem like Clarity Esports, they don't have the fame to go along with it, but they do have the firepower.
I think one of the big storylines here for the individual brands of the players really comes down to how Frebic and Khatak defended the fact that the founding members are not to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
So when this little superstar shuffle started to happen, we thought maybe the Clarity would get better just as a result of potentially getting more star members, but instead, it's the founding members that frag out like crazy. So they're really not to be trifled with. They've actually defended their spots as founding members and really deserving of their spots within the Clarity roster. But man, it has been such a long and arduous road, Talha. I mean, we've been casting it all the way since the quarterfinals, and among all the madness, we've seen the likes of Goaty Peak, we've seen the likes of Team Perfectionist, WDR, Salt Esports, and now even Arrow and Fear Legends finally drop out of the tournament, and that just leaves to it's Team Exploit versus Clarity tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's the first tournament in which Trans has not made it to the finals, or Salt, or Team Arrow. It's always been one of those 3 rosters. It's the first time that Clarity gets a chance to go at it against Team Exploit. And if I were Team Exploit, I mean, I'm obviously not. I don't play as well as Team Exploit, but I would want to do my research. I would want to do my prep on Clarity because they are looking phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think overall this has really changed some things around within the Pakistani gaming scene. So even if you're looking at different FPS titles, even if we go as far back as to Do Gamers Arena 2018 and 2019, you would see the same familiar faces being playing up on the stage, maybe with a couple members being shuffled around, maybe one player playing in the opposite team this time around. But no, instead, Clarity, they're a team that is entirely new faces, so we really haven't seen them at the top of the Pakistani gaming scene. So it's going to be really refreshing to see people that are rookies to the scene balloted out against the likes of HSB, balloted out against the likes of Shaka, who have had a lot of really incredible experiences in the Pakistani gaming scene. But tomorrow is going to be an absolutely nutty day. It's going to be a crazy match between the two grand finalists, and the Her Galaxy tournament, or the grand finals for the Her Galaxy match, will also be happening. So we're gonna have to stay. You guys are gonna have to stay tuned to that. Make sure you check it out because tomorrow is going to be an incredible day. It's Wall Deity and Tultras signing out. See you tomorrow.
Hey! पायलट एग्जाम मिस नहीं कर सकता. उस ट्रेन पर चढ़ना है.
पायलट इसे बनना है. गाड़ी हम छोड़वाएगा.
Hey, पेट्रोल तो पूरा है.
लेकिन ड्यू के बिना एडवेंचर अधूरा है.
लेफ्ट, राइट. मेरी दादी इससे बेहतर गाड़ी चलाती है.
तो खुद चला ले.
Shortcut! Aw. Cute. देख, अब ये ट्रेन छूटनी नहीं चाहिए.
तुझे तो ट्रेन पे चढ़ा के ही रहेंगे.
No, 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 no.
क्या? Thank you.
नहीं, Mountain Dew.
Come on!
माउंटेन ड्यू, यार हैं तो पार हैं.